So talking about finalize method now. What is finalize, Sitara? Any idea you have? Any prior idea?
All I know is that it is used for garbage collection. That is the only thing I know.
Okay. And why that garbage collection is required? What is garbage collection?
Some irrelevant codes which is not needed.
Okay, so irrelevant as in garbage collection is does come into picture when you have some object which does not have any reference. Okay, so if I talk about the object and then reference, let's say, let me open the paint first and then I will explain you. So let's say I'm having some objects in memory, right? So when you create the object, you get the object reference, right? So this object, let's say, is being referred by OB, right? So OB1 or OB something, and this object is being referred by OB2 or something. Okay, OB2 or something, right? So as of now, this object is having some reference, object reference, right? But there are some instances when these object reference would be cancelled. So this object is now not pointing to anything. It is just lying independently in the memory. This also is not pointing to any object reference, this object, when I talk about this. So in that case, what happens, these objects are basically eligible for garbage collection or a destructor we have in whatever we have in C++, right? So to free up the unused memory, right? So we need to cancel those objects, or we need to destroy those objects, right? So there only the garbage collection concept come into picture, right? One second, I'm getting a. So these objects will become eligible for garbage collection, right? So finalize essentially is a method which actually is associated with the garbage collection in Java, right? And with the help of this method, what we can do, just before calling the garbage collection, this method would be called, right? Automatically it would be called, and whatever you put inside this method, like closing of the connection, DB connections, closing of the network connection, that you can do, like you can close those connections before destroying the objects. Let's say there are some connections which are associated with that object, and if the object is destroyed, then you won't be able to close those connections, right? So finalize is the method which would be called automatically before having before canceling your objects which are not in used in memory. You can close all those connections using this finalize method, right? So basically it is a method. So you can write like finalize and like this, and then a block of code you can put here, right? So we will see that in an example. So it is a method. It is basically associated with the garbage collection. With garbage collection. So if the object does not have any reference, if object does not have any reference, any reference variable, it is eligible for garbage collection. Garbage collection or GC you can say. Okay, so before destroying that object, the finalize method would be called automatically. Called automatically. Okay, so so we will see that in an example, and then we will come back to this theory part. So let me create a class finalize class, and then let me add this. Now let's see, I am having two objects here. Finalize f1 equal to new finalize, and then finalize f2 equal to new finalize. Okay, and as of now, both the objects are having some reference, right? F1 and F2. But let's say I am cancelling those references. So I am marking F1 equal to null and F2 is also equal to null. So these two objects would essentially be eligible for garbage collection. So the garbage collector would run in the memory, system memory, and you can invoke that, uh, you know, you can invoke that by yourself also. So this is a class system.gc class, which will actually call the garbage collector, right? So this runs the garbage collector in the Java virtual machine. Okay, and you can just read the description. It basically says that calling the GC method suggests that a Java virtual machine expend effort toward recycling unused objects in order to make a memory that currently occupy available for use by the Java virtual machine, right? So this method will essentially destroy all those objects F1 and F2, right? Now, if there are some open connection which are actually associated with these objects, right, F1 or F2, so those you can close using finalize method. So public finalize. So you have to write like this, and this method would be called automatically. So finalize called. Okay, I will have to. Yeah, so this is a finalize method. Okay, this will be called automatically. If I run this program, then you would see that garbage collector is doing its job. And before doing its job, this finalize method is called automatically. I am not calling it explicitly. Okay, so because there were two objects, so each time the object is killed, the finalize method is called.
Okay.
Okay, so essentially this when it works, so who is calling this garbage finalize method is garbage collector is calling this finalize method, and when it is calling just before destroying the object. Okay, and why it is called to perform cleanup activity. Okay, so who is calling finalize? Garbage collector calls the finalize when it is called just before destroying the object, and why it is called to perform cleanup activity which is associated with that object. Getting it right? So in interview they do ask what is the difference between final, finally, and finalize. So now you would be able to answer that finally is a key. Final is a keyword which is associated with variable or method or class. Finally is a block which we use along with exception handling. And finalize is a method which we use with for garbage collection. GC, yeah. So this is the difference, right? And you must be knowing like what happens when we use final with the variable, right? So it makes constant. When we use final with final with the method, I mean you cannot override that method. When we use final with the class, you cannot inherit that class. And finally, block and exception handling will always be executed, right?
Yes.
And finalize is used with GC, and you can close any of the network connection, database connections, or anything which is associated with object before destroying that object. And when object becomes become the eligible for garbage collector when it does not have any reference in memory, right? So whenever it is lying freely in the memory, so to free up the space and to free up the unused memory, the garbage collection runs in the background. Cool, yeah. Disha, sorry, Satara, cool. Understanding, right?
Yes.
All
Understood.
right. All right.